ask N. Jaikumar what he thinks about all of this. Jake's morning, thanks for joining in. What do you think? We hold around these levels after having broken 4,700, or are you resigning yourself for more downside?
Well, I think my sort of almost dreary pitch, if you will, has been that the index will continue to be frustratingly either range bound or grind lower. But I think in terms of the overall market, the most recent example was this extremely mournful Diwali roundtable that we had on your channel, where there was it was almost funereal in its approach, as it were.
They are your friends, Jake. They are your friends.
Well, that's fine, but I think we were all in a sense presiding over a pretty mournful market condition at that time. But I think it's not to say that there weren't valid concerns everywhere. But I think the biggest takeaway, if you will, is that yes, while we've been bemoaning this, and the government went into a sort of a period of overdrive in terms of believing that India is the place where money would come, and then this we've kind of almost slipped to the brink, as it were, and now they're beginning to act. I think we should run away from the fact that the FDI announcement yesterday has not been the easiest to make. Even the allies have not fully backed it, and you could argue that they've been talking about it for not just 2 years but several years before that. So this is something which is like almost been waiting for Godot. To borrow a literary expression, that this is something that people have said should happen 5-7 years out, and it's been blocked by multiple lobbies, and finally it's sort of gone through. And I kind of congratulate the government for taking a difficult reform step. If they had to choose one, this was a difficult one in the face of all the opposition that could come through, especially in the context of their own sort of weakening position, even amongst their allies, and especially this catharsis in public life on moderate cleansing, etc. So I would just go back and say that what's changed since Diwali, if you will, is that the government, I think, has been now pushed to act. Now, regardless of whether they were pushed to or they actually did act, I think they've taken a big step which will usher in, notwithstanding skepticism that we may have, I think it will usher in a fair amount of FDI over a period of time into India. It may not have to wait for a year or two. I think you'll see announcements coming in quickly, because I think majors have been positioning themselves to come in, but they've been thwarted by regulations not going through, on one hand. Number two, I also think it's good that this regulatory thing where bail has been granted. Now you might say it's a small thing we're clinging to, but maybe these are straws in the wind at this point in time. But I think to an extent I'm expecting normalcy to come through. Then this entire thing about the Companies Act and the winter session coming through, anyone who now comes in the way of blocking parliament progress is going to be seen as almost like a national enemy in a sense. And I think the winter session will surprise us with more announcements than we've been either expecting or bargaining for. So I think low expectations. And just to add to this, we had this financial services. There was a financial company due last night, Gaja Capital, and they have this yearly sort of affair where actually everybody from cross section of the financial services fraternity comes through. And if I were to just sort of divvy up the mood in that room, it ranged from moderately bearish to wildly aggressively bearish. I didn't mention the word bullish because I think it was completely inappropriate to be in that room and even speak anything which would be remotely bullish. But people were extremely bearish, and there was more discussion going on about Greece, Portugal, and what Merkel would or could not say than about the Indian market. So I think if you sum up all this, it is, in this backdrop, I think we've come to an emotional climax as far as a sell-off is concerned. I think it's an emotional climax. And for a moment, let me say that Jaikumar doesn't want to use his own brains. But if you just go by the brains of everybody else in that room and the collective groupthink that emerged, my own sense is that we are closer to a bottom than either any of us is bargaining for, nor any of us is expecting. And if we knew what would actually create a bottom around these levels, give or take 2-3%, then we'd all be going there and buying the market, right? So I would say, just from a default perspective, I would be pretty gung-ho on the markets at this point in time, and that I hope doesn't sound like blasphemy on a down day in the markets. But actually speaking, I think if you take groupthink into account, I would like to play contrarian at this point in time, and I would say that the risk on the upside is substantial. The risk to have on the downside is substantially lower than the potential upside potential. at a time when I think if you take international markets, every conceivable situation has been documented, including this week when the German bonds have been actually under pressure, yields have been rising, and in a sense the final denouement of the climax of the European situation, I think, is unfolding in front of our eyes. I think we're going to have whether it's Germany or Germany and France together, almost forced to sort of move into a situation where they protect the euro and everything else. But regardless of which form and shape that takes, my own feeling is we are at the climactic end of that. And even locally, I think the rupee has been overdone. I think it's been a victim of extreme panic and extreme, should I say, intellectual silence from the Reserve Bank of India, for want of anything more parliamentary to be able to say on this. I think some of the pronouncements have been unbelievably callous and hard-hearted in terms of the way they have let the rupee slide. I mean, you can't allow 49 to go to 52 and then talk about we are looking at the situation. I mean, that's just not on. I mean, this, if nothing else, is fodder, and fodder in plenty for the speculators. So if you want to short the emerging market currencies, I mean, why do you have to go to Brazil, etc., when India is not even defending it? So given this kind of a situation, I think we're approaching, if not already approached, a climactic end to all of this.